I just feel like I'm one of the many people out there who is trying to break the lies as best I can, spread truth, and pull people into these places where they can freely talk about this stuff and be their truest selves. I consider myself a conspiracy analyst, as I like to say, because I think that these are things that we really were lied about, and sharing the real truth will help people. It's going to be a massive game changer for the whole world in just communication for the whole consciousness of humanity right now.
Roger that, ground control. Preparing for second stage separation. Guidance systems online.
Welcome to T-0.
We're live.
I got to meet you a couple of days ago when you presented about Nostr, and in the last 48 hours, it's just like a universe has opened up in terms of the possibilities, the possibility of avoiding censorship and making sure you have privacy, that you own your data, and that you have a payment mechanism also where you can get paid and pay for valuable content. And I really think this is the way to go forward in the future. I'm curious about you as one of the top influencers on Nostr. What's your story and how you got there? What brought you to Nostr? What brought you to decentralization?
It's social media. I mean, I feel like my first memory of using social media was around the end of high school, 2013 for me. That's when I was right at the very end. And I'd never had a phone through high school, so I didn't use social media at all during that time. I feel like as a millennial, we were kind of on that final edge of not having social media when we were like a kid. I had this flip phone that I used when I went snowboarding to find my friends, and that was pretty much all I used as far as a phone. And then right as I was leaving high school, I made my first Instagram post of my skimboard at the beach on the island I grew up, and that was kind of where it started. And after that, I never thought of it, like most people, as this really positive, world-changing potential technology. It always seemed like something you kind of do to escape. And for all those early years, Instagram was used for being your highlight reel of your life, basically. And you just post the best stuff about you. And it was kind of toxic in that way because it gave you the wrong idea that everyone's life is perfect and you feel like yours isn't as good. But it's been really cool watching from that was 2013. So about 12 years. I mean, that's so fast when you think about it. I've seen a huge shift in the last few years of people using it more and more for changing the world in a positive way, being a lot more real on there across all the social media and just seeing it, okay, it's been cool to be part of the millennials that have kind of spearheaded that and turned things around, realize that this is a truly powerful thing that we can use to communicate across the world with each other and make a change. And I definitely wasn't thinking about that early on, but in terms of just the pure social media side, we could go into all sorts of other directions for like how I even figured out that we needed to be changing the world and not just continue playing video games and doing all the stupid stuff that so many people are. But yeah, that was my journey. And I just went along with that way of realizing that, wow, they're finding a lot more inspirational people that are really caring a lot about making the world better and using their life to its most. And as I've gone through all these other journeys of just health journeys and personal journeys, it becomes a clearer and clearer tool. And here comes Nostr out of nowhere in 2020, started by Fiat Jaff just a few years ago. And it fixes all these problems, like you mentioned. The censorship was becoming more of a problem as more people are speaking truth, because there's a lot of truth out there that powerful people that own these social media companies don't like. So that was becoming a clash. And the monetization side, that's always been a big struggle. The people that are creating things on social media want to get paid for it, and they should get paid for it because that's an important thing. Being a spearheader of speaking truth and spreading an important message should be a paid thing, in my opinion. And I think, as Nostr is showing, it's really great. It's giving people more fuel to be themselves and create content that empowers them and that they resonate with. And they can, it's sort of, when you look back in history, people would really lock into what craft they were the best at when they were younger. and maybe their family sort of angled them in a certain direction if it was like a family lineage of a business or something like that. But for the most part, you had some choice for what sort of things you want to do. And today, one could argue that one could even argue you could do that more because there's more options. There's more flexibility to move around, but at the same time, you see these really bright minds and smart people getting sucked into places that are not really what they truly want to do. And a perfect example is people who have like a really smart math brain, really smart at finance and economics and working numbers. They end up just getting sucked up by hedge funds to just crunch numbers and just make some business more money, when there's a lot of bigger things they could be working on to actually make the world a better place than making some boss rich. But since people are so crushed by inflation and all these other economic factors, people are more forced into doing things that just make them money only. When on Nostr, you're making money, but you can do whatever you want. You can post pictures of artwork, you can speak truth, you can share a bunch of crazy conspiracy theories like me, you can just post exercise videos like I know a lot of people do. You can do whatever you want, and if you're creating value for people, then people will send you value back, and you can monetize it. So it cuts away that forcing function of pushing people towards certain industries that were the places you have to go for money, and makes everything monetizable, which I just think is super cool.
So, what year were you born?
So yeah, we'll actually start with a story now, like you originally asked. So I was born in Portland, Oregon, and grew up around the Northwest my whole life. I grew up on a beautiful, beautiful place called Whidbey Island in Washington. That's where I spent all my young years. So I was born in 1994, 31 years old right now, and I moved to Whidbey Island, I think around 2000. I was a young kid, and pretty much spent my whole childhood there, and I consider that my main home. It's a really great place. I always recommend anyone in Washington go visit because it's just full of nature everywhere. There's beaches, there's hills, and lots of hiking trails. And just all of that time around nature really made me care a lot about nature, and it gives you a lot of time to think. And when I go back there to visit, it's cool because all these ideas that we're talking about, I can just go walk in the woods. My parents live right on a beach, right? They just got a new house right on the beach, so I can just go lay on the beach and think about stuff and go walk in the woods and just consider all of these things. And I really think that's something people need to find, is like, where can you go that gives your brain full space to think and work through all the issues that are going on, because everyone has a bunch of stuff going on.
So nature was clearly one influence. I'm
It's
always
always been a
looking
big
for
influence.
those key influences.
Yes.
It's interesting how just certain type of people get pulled towards decentralized subjects and
Yeah.
solutions, and even Bitcoin. And I'm looking for those parallels. What else would you term as influencing your past in a way that got sucked you into the...
Yeah, I guess I can just continue all of the story, and the influences will kind of pick up along the journey. So grew up there in Washington, went to university at the University of Washington in Seattle, which is a huge school. I basically learned how to party there and make friends. Looking back on it now, the whole school side is just, that wasn't really where I got the value. And it's funny because I even go back to visit now sometimes because I live so close to it, and it's become a new part of my routine. It's kind of fun to go back and get an Airbnb by my old university and go record podcasts and do my current stuff there where I used to study when I was younger. And just looking around at all the students and just thinking, like, man, they're just kind of getting a life sucked out of them and learning all this nonsense. It's not really vitalized. It's sending them through that track I talked about earlier of just going to find some job that you hate, working for a boss. But anyway, so I went through school, didn't really have any inspiration of anything. I was basically just thinking, okay, I'm just going to go through school and I'm going to go work in an office my whole life. And I guess that's what it is. I wasn't really feeling pulled outside of the normie track until after school, graduated, started working, and immediately realized I hate this. I don't want to do this. And then I started traveling instead. So I had just enough money saved up. I think I remember I had about $8,000 total just from working. I think it was a year and a half I worked. I did a recruiting job for a bit. I did some door-to-door sales for a bit, and just realized I need to go see the world. it's kind of a funny story. I met a guy at this party who just got back from 6 months working holiday in Australia, and it just sounded super cool. So I decided to do that. I went to Australia, and that's where the gears finally started turning. I started meeting all these new people, hearing people's stories, listening to, I don't know if I really got into podcasts, but I started watching YouTube videos and just consuming content from the decentralized space, as you like to talk about. And before that, I was pretty much, most of my content was coming from, well, when I was younger, at my parents' house, they always just had the news on TV. They would watch CNN or something like that. And so I would just watch that with my meals, and that was pretty much where I got my information. And then in college, I wasn't really consuming any content of that kind. I was kind of just, I was pretty in the moment, which was good. Like I was with my friends and having fun. And then after school, I started thinking, okay, like let's start figuring out where to get my information from here. I was kind of getting the sense that the mainstream news, those centralized big tech, or not big tech, but big mainstream media institutions were not, I didn't feel like they were really enriching me. So I started looking into YouTube videos, watching some YouTube channels, and then 1 or 2 years later, got more into podcasts. And I feel like podcasts are really, I don't know, something about just being raw conversations, which you're doing right here, of course, and I'm doing on my own podcast as well. That was a huge kickoff for me of just consuming a lot more, hearing a lot more perspectives, and the brain just continues to expand outward and outward. As like every other young guy, I was listening to Joe Rogan, walking around, just like that was really the first big podcast I started listening to, and Tim Ferriss, lots of other of the main ones like that back in early 2020s, and that was where I really started getting on a track of this is super cool. Like I can tell that this is definitely the future of information distribution, and I was getting much more inspired by it, which comes to all the way to 2023, where I started my own podcast and started bringing on people that I wanted to talk to. Because of course I'm listening to all these other podcasts, but thinking like, man, I know way cooler guests that you could bring on there that are way smarter than this. Like even Joe Rogan right now, I look through his guest list and I just feel like I know way cooler people than this. Like I just feel like that's one of the superpowers I have, is finding the coolest people. And of course you do as well. That's why you have me on. And
I'm still in training.
But yeah, I mean, it's so cool. Just the more podcasts we have in the world, the better, I believe. And this is the power of the decentralization, especially if you're a podcaster yourself, to have the abundance mindset and not say like, no, I don't want more podcasts because like then there's more competition, less people will listen to mine. Instead, the more, the better, because we need to destroy these old models of centralized information flow, which is poisoning the minds of, like everyone has those people in our life. It's usually the older folks. Sorry, mom and dad, I love you. But the older generations grew up in a higher trust society where they trust authority, and they didn't have things blow up in their face like they do for us, where you can't even afford food and housing and energy. Everything was ridiculously expensive. Things were working for them. They got to ride the Federal Reserve money printer. It made life easier for them, sorry to say. But it's just true when you look at the actual wages and the housing prices and whatnot. So they're still doing that for the most part. When you look at people over 60, they're still watching TV or listening to a couple of radio stations or whatever it is. But the young folks are really just branching out all over the place. And especially Gen Z, I'm super excited about Gen Z. I feel like they just instantly know by default that the news is BS. And they're going straight to podcasts, straight to TikTok Reels. And the whole big tech side, the centralized big tech side is, obviously as a Nostr maximalist, there's problems with big tech too, and these platforms like TikTok and X and Instagram. I still consider that a huge step forward from the talking box where you only have like one voice that comes through, but there's levels to the game. I just think Nostr is the highest level of the game, and you just work your way up in steps. The further we can push people up that chain, the more we'll see people's brains fully come alive, and that's what's beautiful to watch.
Amazing. So Nostr is your main instrument, but you also publish on some of the mainstream channels like YouTube?
Yeah, I still keep a finger in all of them. Currently, I'm really into Rumble, actually, because for me, a lot of the content I want to put out there is not YouTube friendly. It all gets censored. because we're pushing the boundaries on it, and Rumble is a lot friendlier for that. And while it is a centralized platform, it's more censorship friendly, and so I've just been going really hard on that. And there's a huge audience of people that are going over there for these alternative views. People like Nick Fuentes is a big name. I'm sure you've heard of him. If you heard, yeah, and he's really leading the charge for Gen Z, just starting to just get really angry at the current political system on all sides. They hate Trump, they hate Kamala, they hate all the politicians, and they're talking about the real problems in the political sphere. And I don't agree with Nick on everything, but I love anyone that's really shaken up the paradigm, and he's doing that on there. And so him alone is just bringing tons of people over to Rumble, and lots of these other podcasters that are pushing the boundaries are getting banned from YouTube. This guy just yesterday, Zoomer Historian, the Gen Z guy who makes videos about just history and World War II specifically, makes a lot of that. And he talks about how maybe things were a little bit more complicated than the story we were taught in school. That's pretty much it. He's only asking questions, but you're not allowed to do that. And so he got banned from YouTube yesterday. He had like 500,000 subscribers or something. So
What was his name?
Zoomer Historian.
Zoomer Historian.
And he made great videos. They're long, informational, but he got banned because he was asking questions about things you're not allowed to ask questions about. And this is another cool thing that I'm seeing is the Streisand effect is taking off in a big way. Have you heard of the Streisand effect?
Tell me.
So the Streisand effect is when someone tells you you're not allowed to learn about something or you're not allowed to talk about something, it really makes you want to learn and talk about it more. And that's happening in a really big way. And as more and more of these voices are getting banned and censored, it's bringing more interest to them. And so that's exciting. We're really past the point of no return on a lot of this stuff. And so in the whole World War II topic specifically, pointing on that, that's a huge one right now in 2025. I'd say that's one of the biggest topics. People are starting to stop and say, like this is, I don't know if you've heard of the documentary Europa, The Last Battle. It's a 12-hour series.
Yeah, I started watching it. That was mind-blowing.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And people are watching this I'd say that documentary alone is just exploding paradigms. Whenever anyone posts about it on any social media, it just goes viral because everyone knows behind the scenes. And if you watch that, you're going to realize we were told some huge lies about the entire history of the last 100 years plus. And as more people are asking questions about that, it's becoming more of an unavoidable topic. And so people are forced into these going to backup plans of platforms that say that they're more censorship resistant, or their CEO says more nice words about will be free speech here, but it's still, most of these people are still stuck in a centralized world. Speaking of Europa, you can't even post a link to their website on Twitter. It just gives you an error. Same thing on Instagram. You can't post a link to go watch Europa, The Last Battle.
So everybody go and see Europa.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like this is, and I've been pushing that on Nostr specifically and just spamming that link on there because it's the only place you can. And so I'm trying to get more people thinking like there's a reason why this is the most banned thing everywhere else. And it's a perfect example of this is why we need Nostr, because you can't be banned from it. And technically, certain relays or clients can start banning you, but the incentives are set up in such a way that they don't want to do that because then they'll have a terrible reputation and people will all move to a different client and different relay. And even if every single, and we can talk more about the specifics of how Nostr works if you want, but in a nutshell for people who haven't heard of it.
Actually, before you go into Nostr details more, I'd love to know where you stand with, people call it conspiracy theory, I call it reality theory.
Yeah.
What are your sweet spots?
That's a hard question to answer. I'd say most people on Nostr know me as the conspiracy guy. Like I'm always throwing out all kinds of stuff. I just think that there's so many lies we've been told before, and I'm so fascinated by this. And it takes a certain amount of realizing that we've just been lied to about everything. And each one of those cracks in the armor just makes you more and more open-minded to like, shit, maybe this thing is a lie, this thing is a lie. And there are certain ones are huge ones, like watching Europa is a massive paradigm shatterer for a lot of people. It was for me, definitely. The people will laugh at this. Of course, I don't even know if I told you about this one, but the whole flat earth theory, which is the king of conspiracy theories. Everyone knows if you think the Earth is flat, you are a crazy idiot. And so I came out there earlier this year and just said, all right, I've figured out so many of these things are lies. Where are the flat earthers? Where are the craziest of crazies at? I want to see some flat earth document. Give me your craziest conspiracy theory. And lo and behold, some guy sends me a few documentaries and he said, yeah, you should watch these. They're pretty interesting. And I said, okay, let's do it.
How deep into that theory have you been diving?
So that
so
was
far?
that was I think around February this year. So what is that? 9 months ago. I'm completely convinced now.
No shit.
Yeah,
That is insane.
I am.
You look like a very smart guy. Like, holy shit, that is insane.
I thought it sounded completely insane, just like everyone else, everybody else. But when you just go through the steps of where does this idea that we're on a globe come from in the first place? You need to dig all the way back to first principles, and this is a common theme that Bitcoiners understand as you go through the different lies. Start from where did this idea come from? Where, like the Inception movie, like where's the first seed planted to believe this? And for the Earth thing, the first thing you see in preschool as you walk in, maybe kindergarten, you see a globe on a teacher's desk. And like you're literally taught in kindergarten about the planets and things. And you watch a movie and the first thing you see is a universal logo with the Earth. And you look at the history textbook and the geography textbooks and it's got planets everywhere. So we're getting this information from the educational system in Hollywood, which lie about basically everything else. So I would just ask people, I'm not going to give the whole spiel unless you want me to. I'm happy to, but I really...
Does that mean the whole space travel and all of that is also projected illusion? Or?
I'm very skeptical about all of it. And I would direct people, I talked earlier about how I'm really into Rumble right now because they're open to more things. And there isn't really a Nostr version of YouTube yet. So that's part of the reason why I'm using Rumble at this point. I have gotten obsessed with just spam uploading tons of documentaries and presentations and podcasts about all sorts of stuff. And Flat Earth is one of them. That's probably one of my biggest playlists because that's the one that people demand the most proof on for good reason. That's a huge, huge leap for everybody, including myself early on, just thinking there's no way that's true because everyone's heard this since they were born. And so I made a podcast series about it. On my podcast is like a video series about 11 hours total. I had three different people who I really appreciate, and I dig their content. They post a lot of content about this stuff, of just asking questions about things. And yeah, I'd recommend people go to my Rumble channel and go to my playlists.
What's the name of your channel and your show?
It's just my name on Rumble. So rumble.com/user/Ben Wehrman. But I actually do this. All of my links to everything are on my website, benwehrman.com/links. So that's where I have the Rumble channel, the Nostr, and I still keep a foothold in all the old social media channels, mainly to try to pull them into Nostr. Like my X account, I have over 30,000 followers on there that I've been building for a while. But the first thing you see in the bio is everyone needs to go to Nostr. And I'm really pushing Nostr. And it's funny because more and more people are realizing that my friend Ryan Matta, who is huge on X, he has over 300,000 followers there. He's finding whenever he posts about Nostr on it, his posts are getting super censored. So these platforms are starting to realize that Nostr is about to steal their lunch and blow the whole game up. So I really am encouraging people with bigger accounts out there that you've been spending a lot of time building to pull those people over to Nostr before it becomes a huge pain in the ass to talk about it, because they're really going to hound you in those platforms to not talk about it.
I noticed because I basically got into Nostr a couple of days ago, and I made a couple of posts on X and Facebook about moving my focus and some of my content over there, and they had zero traction. Like somehow all of the mainstream social apps and channels are already, they're probably targeting the word Nostr itself by now.
It's starting. Yeah, it's. I haven't done real study to see, because it's also possible that people just haven't heard of it and they're like, what is this other social media thing? There's some of that too, but it's some mixture of algorithms starting to figure it out, I think, and people just being fatigued on all these new platforms that are coming out. And that's the biggest issue that we all have is that we're so tired of people saying, oh, follow me on this other thing, follow me on this other thing. There's so many of them already, and Nostr is a brand new one, and it is a little bit intimidating for some people because it works differently than the others, because it's decentralized. There's a whole ecosystem of apps that you can choose from, and people maybe get a little paralysis from the amount of options, like, well, how does this even work? I'm just going to stick with Instagram because it's a single app, it's easier.
Right.
But
So they set up in 2020, first time?
So I believe the very end of 2020 was when Fiat Jaff initially launched it, and it didn't start actually bringing people in until 2021, but only the early adopters. And I came in, I think it was January 23, which is still quite early. I'm quite proud of that, except I'm a little bit mad I didn't do it just a couple weeks earlier. I would have been in the class of 2022, which is like ultra elite, super early. But yeah, we're still very early.
So, and how big do you have an estimate on the community size now and the growth? Are we in the S curve yet?
That's a really good question. I know there's sources out there you can look at that. I haven't looked in a while, so I'm not sure. It's much smaller than Instagram and Twitter, obviously, but it's the people who are on there are solid, and they're not leaving because they know it's awesome. They know so. Even though it's still on it's definitely not S curve yet. It's still trickling up slowly. We've got some big people that are on there, like Jack Dorsey, for example, the guy who created Twitter, and his boss named Rabble, who is also on there. Both of these two guys that basically made Twitter found Nostr and said, this is amazing. And even gone as far to say in many interviews, like, this is what we were trying to make at Twitter, but failed because it fell into a more corporate structure at Twitter. And that's not what they wanted. I know Jack Dorsey is a controversial guy when you talk about it on X, because a lot of those people were around when Trump got banned, and they point the finger at Jack Dorsey, but it wasn't really his fault when you actually analyze it. That he wasn't in control of that situation, because once all the shareholders dig their tentacles into this thing, and it's all financialized, it's a public stock and everything, there's so many factors at play that stop you from being able to keep things free. So that's why Nostr from the beginning was built in a completely different structure to avoid that from happening. And Jack Dorsey sees that and says, this is amazing. That's why he donated a ton of Bitcoin to developers to build it out more. And he goes out to talk about how cool it is now. He does presentations all over the place, and I think it's awesome.
Well, it also blew me away that it wasn't just a couple of apps. It's actually like a host of apps.
Tons of apps.
And they're mushrooming.
Yeah.
Streaming music, streaming podcasts.
Yep.
Well, all kinds of things that are where creators can get paid into their Sats account.
Yeah.
And they can pay back, and they can transfer the money to their Bitcoin account. That is amazing. There's no intervention in money flows, and it works really well.
And I don't know if you saw this, but just today, speaking of Jack Dorsey, his company Square just flipped a switch. So all of these Square terminals all over the world can suddenly accept Bitcoin. So a ton of payment processors can now get paid in Bitcoin just by default, because they use these Square terminals. They're everywhere. They're super abundant. And so now I wrote this blog post a couple months ago about a month-long trip I had in Costa Rica earlier this year. I lived in this place with a bunch of other Nostr friends in Costa Rica, in this place called Uvita, which goes by Bitcoin.
I lived there 2 years ago.
You're kidding. Amazing. So you can buy everything with Bitcoin there. You can buy your meat with Bitcoin. You can go to the farmer's market and buy your raw milk with Bitcoin. So my life there was literally spending the morning posting podcasts, posting memes on Nostr, and just stacking as many sats as I could, trying to get enough to pay for my food for the day. I don't know how much, like, I don't think I 100% covered everything, but it was close enough to where it's exciting. I would stack a bunch of sats in the morning, just doing my posting and usual social media work and posting podcasts, then walk down to the farmer's market and buy my eggs and come home with Bitcoin. All through Nostr, all through the Primal wallet was the one I was using. Primal is a Nostr client that has a built-in Bitcoin wallet. So I would do everything through that, and this was so cool, such a cool experience to do that. And now with all these Square terminals launching Bitcoin payments, so many more people can now start doing that and experience that. And so this is why I'm just pounding the table for people to look into this, because there's so many creators out there who are having all of these problems with the legacy social media structure, especially on X, and we're seeing more and more on Instagram. And Instagram is interesting because I feel like they're just getting overpowered by a lot of the awakening that's going on. I'm seeing a lot of pretty high signal stuff on Instagram. It's not getting banned, but I think at some point they're going to do a huge crackdown. But on X, there's been a lot of people go there to speak the truth, and it's more publicly seen when they get censored because a lot of people raise a ruckus about it. I'm just telling these people, you got to get on Nostr and check this out because this solves your problem of censorship, and it also allows you to make money right there. And it's such a game changer, and I really think this is the ultimate bridge we need to take people across, and it's going to be a massive game changer for the whole world in just communication for the whole consciousness of humanity right now, because we need people to be free to speak their minds. You cannot overstate how huge of a deal that is, that people that are doing all of their communication on these centralized platforms have to self-censor and stop themselves from saying the whole truth because they're afraid of getting banned or shadow banned, because you don't know who's controlling the algorithms. So once you bring people to Nostr, and I've experienced this in a huge way, a lot of other people too, is that you mentally feel so much more free just by switching to Nostr, which is kind of a crazy thing to say.
I felt that, yeah.
Yeah. And you hear all these people and see all these posts on Nostr, people saying, Nostr has changed my life. It's made me feel so much more free and alive. And an outsider will look at that and think, like, really? Like, this is just another social media thing. Like, how would it change how your consciousness is functioning? And that's pretty much it, is that it removes the danger of getting taken down for saying the wrong thing or having the wrong opinion. It gives you the ability to monetize anything. So as a personal example, posting content on there, writing my thoughts, sharing the music I'm listening to, posting anything you want. As we mentioned earlier, it can be literally anything. If people out there on Nostr, and this is also a big reason why the people with big accounts should bring their followers over too. Don't just make an account, but tell your followers, come follow me here, because these are people that want to support you and they appreciate what you're bringing into the world. But up until now, all they've had is a heart button to show their support. But now they can send you little bits of sats, and they want to do that. It feels good to reward the creators that bring value to you. Everyone on Nostr can feel this, and this is one of the big questions early on was, well, okay, like you can pay people, but are people really actually going to pay up for their creators, or are they just going to cheap out and not do it? Turns out people love sending sats all over the place. You're constantly seeing zap, 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 and these clients are even putting in really cool ways. I think Damus does this, and Primal definitely does this, where each post has a little top zap ranking. So whoever sends the biggest zap, and I should say zap is like a verb we use for sending sats to people on Nostr. Whoever sends the biggest zap gets this little top spot underneath the post, and it's sort of showcased. So the incentives are there. It helps everyone, because if you're supporting a creator in a big way, they will appreciate it. They may follow you back. They can see that, and everyone else can see that. They're like, this person is being a good member of the community. And they feel good, obviously, because they're making money. So everybody wins in this system where financial flow is open and all built on Bitcoin. It's perfect.
Right. So, minor question, but for blog writers that like do long articles, let's say Substack writers, would they be publishing the whole text on Nostr, or would they link to their Substack?
Yeah, so a lot of clients are implementing and have implemented long-form writing functionality. I know Primal has that. Yakihone is one that I know is focused on that. Yakihonne. I haven't used that one a ton myself, but I know it's more blog focused. And this is going to completely blow up the whole Medium Substack niche, because you can do it on Nostr. And we haven't even talked about the whole social graph side of things, but Medium and Substack are part of this old system of all these walled garden silos, where every one of these platforms, you have a different follower group, which makes it a pain, and it's just annoying. It makes more sense if you have the same followers everywhere, which is what Nostr is doing, is creating replicas, in some cases, of these things that we know and love, but you now have your followers on them. So when you log into that different client, so Yakihone, for example, I haven't used it enough to say if it's like, well, let's just say for this example that it's like Substack replacement. You have all your followers right on there already. You log into it and all the people there are following you. You have all your whole feed is already made up, and it's going to show all of the long form articles from the people that you follow. And you get to choose your own experience. So say if I want Instagram experience, there's one called Olas, built by this guy named Pablo who makes a bunch of cool Nostr stuff. So you can go there and you have your same follower graph, your social graph. And then if I want to read some things, I go to Yakihone, and then you see only the long form stuff from your followers. So you move around, but you see the content from the people you want in the type of content you want. It's amazing.
Got it. What about video makers, YouTubers? Obviously, there's a size limit for data, but how are they solving the upload issues in getting like 20 to 60-minute videos out?
That's a great question, and I haven't been super closely following that.
How do you do it?
How do I do it? So right now, I just have the premium version on Primal, and so like you said, videos are big files, and this is one of the trade-offs of being on a decentralized system, whereas on places like Twitter, maybe not Instagram, you can't post like super long on Instagram, but on Twitter, you can post long stuff. But even Twitter, I think you have to pay the premium version to do like really long, like 2 hour, because that costs money for them, you know? I think only if you're not premium, you're cut off at like 2 minutes or something. But big videos, they take up space, and that takes server space, so it costs a little bit. And as I was telling you about when you were asking this question the other day, I know that one of the services out there is Nostr.build, where it's just like a server space that you plug into your Nostr account, and then you can post all the gigs you want that fall into your plan that you buy. And Primal has it just built in. You get the premium account, and then you get X amount of storage space, and you can just upload away to your heart's content. And does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does actually. Because I would love it if the community built a solution where you can really start building long form content, so that they don't have to jump into those YouTube links, etc.
And the whole idea of, as I mentioned earlier, there isn't really a Nostr version of YouTube yet, but I know that people are working on this, and there's a lot of really cool tech being built that I don't have a strong enough grasp to understand. I know people are really excited about Blossom. It's basically this way of decentralizing video storage on a computer, but go find someone like Derek Ross to ask that question. He's a great guy to talk to. He's an amazing mix of both really understanding the community human side and being super technical. So he's like my best conversation plus the whole technical side. He's a great guy to talk to. He's one of the best Nostr educators there is. And and here's another thing for people listening. For any questions like this, I told you this as well, for questions about what's being built on Nostr, because things are being built so fast. I don't even follow it all myself, because I'm not like a super technical person that likes to try things in their real raw state and give feedback and stuff. I kind of want to just see it a little bit later down the line when it's more done. I know some people love just being on the true ground floor of things, and which Nostr in a way is, the whole thing is. But when you're talking about specific clients and things like video platforms through Nostr, there's so much being built, and I don't even try to keep tabs on all of it. So what you can do is you can go ask these questions and use the hashtag #AskNostr. And that, a lot of people follow that. A lot of the people that are really dug in and building this stuff are following that as well. And just say, hey, is there like a Pinterest type client being built out there? Is there one already built, for example? And people who are plugged into that and understand the developer side of things and what's being created can answer that for you. Because it's a huge developer sandbox with all sorts of people building stuff. Smart people are building stuff, and it's super exciting. It's overwhelming for some. Like, I don't even try to follow all the updates. There's a website called nostrapps.com where you can see a huge array of all the different apps that are there and being built and constantly going through updates. It's incredible. It's like a whole ecosystem is blooming right now, and we just get to bear the fruits of it and appreciate the developers who are making this for us. And more developers are finding it, as big names like Jack Dorsey are investing money into the space. And there's things like OpenSats, which is kind of a donation distribution network where developers can apply and say, I have this cool thing I want to build, and they can get grants through that, and then they can start building these cool things. And this is amazing because right now, in the legacy system of Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and TikTok, you pretty much have what you got, and you can't change those things. They're completely owned by a central authority. And even asking them questions and trying to change things is never going to happen. You can't send in a request to Instagram to change something. But in Nostr, you can actually connect with these developers because there's so many of them. They all have their little pet projects that they're building. You can actually connect with them. And
it's kind of a network effect of developers communicating with each other.
Yeah, and if things do get big enough to where they can't connect directly with you anymore, you can say, screw it, I want this thing. I'll build my own client. You can use, there's even non-technical people can use AI to do what we call vibe coding, which is create an app yourself. And you can make the exact client you want on Nostr. It's open for anyone to do that. And this is the beauty of how the Nostr protocol functions. It functions more like email, where email is the protocol. It's an open protocol. And there's lots of different apps that plug into that, like Gmail, Proton Mail, Outlook, and whatnot. And I don't know if anyone can make an email client. I feel like you could. I'm not sure exactly, but there's lots of them is the point. And on Nostr, you can definitely, anyone can create it. Anyone can create a client. Anyone can run their own relay, which is the server side of things. So if you don't like how things are on a certain client, maybe you don't like Primal or Yakihon or whatever, you can make Ben client and just work on that yourself. And maybe hire, if you have money, hire some developers to make it the exact way you want. And then you have your own app you can use, and you can make the exact experience you want on social media and have all your followers there.
What's your take on AI bots? Theoretically, if someone wanted to take Nostr down, they can't use the traditional methods, but could they swarm the system with AI bots, taking over accounts and messing around? Is that something the Nostr community has been talking about?
So the bot problem is a good question. That's always a thing on social media. Twitter is terrible about that. Like, I don't know. There's constant spam in my DMs. It's almost unusable. And under every single post I make, pretty much there's spam comments. And YouTube is full of spam. Rumble's full of spam. Like every one of these platforms is full of spam. And you just ask yourself, like, how are these companies not fixing this? And I would say, as of now, I'm not going to say there's zero spam on Nostr. That'd be impossible, probably. But there's way less already. And a big part of it is because we do occasionally see these waves of spam come through where some bot army just seems to get deployed out of nowhere for a day or two on certain posts or in certain hashtags or a feed or whatever. And what has happened up until now is that because of the competition between the clients, it's an open competitive marketplace, and the relays as well, is they all get to work on fixing it in a competitive environment. So you see this problem solved much more quickly, and more efficiently. Because on Twitter, people can bitch and moan about bots, but they're not going to leave to some other place. They're just going to keep whining and tagging Elon and saying, fix this. On Nostr, there's so little friction between the clients that if one of them is giving you a bad experience, you just go to a different one. And so that incentivizes the developers and these teams to build really good solutions that actually work well, keep the crap out, and good content in.
So we have this inception of a burgeoning community that is completely safe and where we can express ourselves and even earn sats. I would ask as a last question from you, being exposed to so many conspiracy/reality theories, how do you see the imminent future and where this world is heading? And what do you think is most important for people who don't want to hear conspiracy theories but need a kind of a reality check on where we are? What are the topics close to your heart? What's happening here?
This is the big question. Always thinking about this. This is the number one thing I think about when I go out for a walk at night, looking at the moon, just thinking like, where are we heading right now? And there are a lot of different mindsets one can have when you look around at the world and what's going on. It's a lot of people can get totally black-pilled and just say, like, when you watch the Europa series, it's pretty black-pilling of like, wow, we have been lied to about so many things, and everybody I know is in this deep pit of deception where they don't really understand who's in control of the world and who is writing all of our textbooks and making all the media and running the porn industry on all yada, yada, yada. Like, things like that. When you go down certain rabbit holes like that one, it's depressing and just like, wow, we have a huge mountain to climb to fix this mess. But there are other conspiracy rabbit holes like the flat earth one, which we also talked about, which to me has been extremely enlightening. And that's been a huge positive influence on how I think about the world we live in and how I feel about the future, which is kind of weird. Like when people hear that, they're like, how does the shape of the earth affect your mindset about things? Just go watch my Rumble playlist and start watching videos and you'll understand. But overall, I would just say that the reason why I'm basically just like just shotgunning all these conspiracy theories of people, first of all, because I think they're true. I consider myself a conspiracy analyst, as I like to say, because I think that these are things that we really were lied about, and sharing the real truth will help people wake up on lies and figure out truths, which is in itself great, obviously. But more than that, every one of those armor chinks that we put into people of just saying, oh, that's another lie, another lie, another lie. It forms them into a much more open-minded to everything and much more of a fresh slate of let's just start from scratch and build something new. And that's kind of the end game that people reach eventually, where there's like, we need to start over. We need to start everything over. And things like
a parallel reality getting built
yeah.
rather than trying to bring down.
Exactly. And Bitcoin was really the first big thing that was like that. It's parallel reality. It's a completely peaceful opt-out. You can just say, I don't want to use your fiat money that pays for all these wars and all this misery and destruction and inflates away every day. I'm going to use this other currency that was made, has a strict supply limit. I can pay anyone I want to without bank's permission. And it's just like Nostr is the same thing. These are all peaceful revolutions that are taking place under the surface, which as people go through more of these rabbit holes, they realize we need these open protocol type solutions that aren't ruled by centralized forces. And as people find their way there, it just becomes an exponentially blooming future potential as more and more people find that, because as more people are able to speak the truth and make money from it and earn money that doesn't inflate through Bitcoin, which they can earn on Nostr now. Nostr and Bitcoin, by the way, amazing combination. They work together so well. It's just a super powerful combination. And so the more of these conspiracies people check off the list and realize that we were lied about, the more that they will naturally go into that path. And I just feel like I'm one of the many people out there who is trying to break the lies as best I can, spread truth, and pull people into these places where they can freely talk about this stuff and be their truest selves. And that's going to create an extremely beautiful world. I'm super optimistic. And the more I learn about these solutions that are being created, the more optimistic I am that the future is going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Give me a hug.
Yeah, dude, bring it in. That was great.
So happy to meet you.
Yes, that was fantastic.